up, guys?
What's up?
Welcome to Switching Gear.
Yes.
What should they do? What should they do?
What should who do?
Our viewers.
They should subscribe.
All day long.
All day. Come on, guys. It's so easy. You literally just have to click that little subscribe button, and there's a little notification deal, so you can be notified when we release new material. And, yeah. So do it. What does it take? It's a click of a mouse. Or push of a screen if you're on a tablet.
And we could use the support.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Definitely. We want to keep bringing these episodes to you and new gear. And to do that, we need your support. So,
yeah.
I know Craig's been bugging you, and we have the icon that's going to fly up right about
the little,
now. Yeah.
The little guy.
So please.
Yes.
And with that, let's have some coffee.
All right, cheers.
All right, cheers.
All right. So today, for this episode, we're going to do something a little different. Rather than talking, you'll see that we're holding some guitars that we've previously... Did we have this in an episode yet? I don't know that we have.
Not these two side by side. No.
Yeah, not these two side by side, but they have appeared in episodes along the way. So we're actually not talking about guitars today in particular, but I want to talk about tone and sound. And what is tone? What is sound?
Right.
Does sound affect tone? Does tone affect sound? Are they synonymous? Are they completely separate things altogether? I know that's kind of a conversation that guitar players have been having for quite some time.
Right.
And thought it would be, Joe had this really cool idea to me. It'd be fun to talk about it. And
let's have it
get your input.
Yeah,
Listen,
right.
There's a comment section, so we would love to hear what you guys have to say about it as well.
Absolutely.
So let's open it
up.
up.
It's a conversation in tone, right?
Yeah.
So going back, when I first started playing guitar, I just thought of guitar sounds as guitar sounds, right? You had a clean sound, you had a distorted sound. And,
sure.
And it was, what type of clean sound or what type of distorted sound, right? And then somewhere along the way, I started realizing that certain players, have a sound. Regardless of whatever gear they're using, guitar, amp, or otherwise, they still sound like themselves.
Agree 100%.
Right? And I learned that that's what I consider tone.
Yes.
Okay? Tone is, and you may have seen this or read this or heard other people speak about tone being in the hands. I believe that. To me, tone is that almost undescribable it factor that makes an individual sound like themselves.
Yeah. It's their tone, their character as a guitar player.
Correct.
And it's what differentiates Steve Vai from Joe Satriani, from anybody really. It's there, and I think there are a lot of things that go into that.
Style being one of them.
Style,
right?
Technique, note choices will
technique.
Affect that. But technique, not only people think about the left hand, right, and vibrato, I think, is a huge factor in that. Everybody's vibrato is different. Some people have very wide, very what was the word I'm looking for? Like deliberate vibrato.
Dynamic vibrato.
Other guys are fast, and it's I think of Steve Morse. He has that goat vibrato, whatever they call it. And then Vai might have that very wide. So he does that thing where he actually does the classical vibrato with the bendy vibrato, which is so. These are all characteristics of the player that play into their tone. I also think pick attack has a lot to do with it as well.
It does.
So so I'm in full agreement that tone, I think, comes from the player and sound comes from the equipment, right?
Correct.
So
if you took a player like Billy Gibbons, let's just say, and you put him on, a JP guitar through a Mesa Boogie, high gain kind of setup, he's still going to probably sound like Billy Gibbons.
Yeah.
The type of, licks or whatever that he's going to play and how he plays them is unique to him, right? And the same thing with Vai. You mentioned Vai, right? He's going to always sound like Vai. You put it on, it doesn't matter what the gear is.
Yeah.
Right? It's the player. It's in the hands. And I think that is super critical. And I think somewhere along the way, the notion of a guitar tone, which is to me the sound, sort of got jumbled up in there somewhere. Tone to me has more to do with the feel of the player, right? You'll hear the words, that player's got a lot of feel. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? Does feel mean they're a slow bluesy player? Or does feel mean they're an intense, fast speed player?
Well, it could be anything, right?
Exactly.
It could be any of the above.
Exactly. And I think people have pigeonholed the term feel, meaning to be a blues slow, a
Right.
over whatever chords, right?
Yeah.
That's feel. I would argue and say a player like Yngwie has just as much feel
Yeah.
in the ferocity of the playing.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
That's a feeling as well.
Yeah, yeah, and and going back to tone, I read an article or saw an interview years back with Nuno Bettencourt when Gary Cherone first joined Van Halen. Nuno went to a rehearsal, and at one point Eddie said, "Hey, Nuno, come up and play my stuff," and he said it didn't sound like Eddie.
Of course not.
So he's playing on Eddie's equipment, everything Eddie, it's all there. And Nuno, who's an unbelievable player, could probably cop any style. Didn't sound like Eddie Van Halen. He sounded like Nuno playing it.
Right, because all of
the tone is in the player.
it's in the player, and it's just like a voice, like a vocalist, right?
Sure.
There's vocalists that sound similar, but right, what makes a Frank Sinatra and what makes a Steve Perry and what makes a David Lee Roth are three different things, right? And they have their own tone. It's the same thing with guitar players.
Yeah.
Guitar players have
100%.
their own tone, and stylistically, a player might be a neoclassical shred player, right? So he's in that Yngwie camp, let's say.
Sure.
But he's going to sound different
Definitely.
than Yngwie.
So, it's funny. I don't know how many of you guys out there are beginner, intermediate, advanced players, whatever you may be, but I'll speak to beginner players here. One of the things that I stress most when I talk to people that are learning to play guitar is, look, you can learn technique and you can become very proficient, but there's so many subtleties that form your character as a player that should not be overlooked in the process.
That's right.
So one of those things is vibrato and making sure that your vibrato isn't pitchy, things like that.
Like the bend I just did before.
So, work on things like that. Like make sure that the interval that you're playing is in key. If you're always playing full step vibrato, that full step may not work in the key you're playing, and it might have to be a half step vibrato pull. Even I remember as a beginner, just playing single note phrases, just like up high on the neck, just playing like no vibrato, pick attack, trying to hear how much of the note I'm hearing, how much of the pick I'm hearing, and trying to find that balance of attack. Subtle things like that, I think, are so important in developing your character and your tone as a player and paying attention to those subtleties, because playing fast is cool and it's whatever, but so many people are doing it nowadays
Right.
that I feel like the thing that differentiates one from the other is their individualism, and I think a lot of that comes from paying attention to those subtleties and not just being like, I want to whip through the scale as fast as I can.
Right.
Because, man, I see like 7-year-olds
Right.
whipping through scales as fast as they can now.
Right.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It is
Which
crazy.
is great, and I think
Right.
that has a lot to do with YouTube, which
yeah,
we're on right now,
without a
and
doubt.
having accessible, teachers that are always there teaching or talking about guitar, or being able to view a video of a player actually playing something that you normally, well, not normally, but back in our day, we couldn't see visually what they were doing. We'd have to try to figure out by ear what was going on. Now you can see that. So I think that...
And you could pause it, and you could play it in slow motion.
Yeah. But I think that's catapulted the progress of the younger player.
No doubt.
Is having that
Absolutely.
ability to
Absolutely.
go back. So,
And that's great.
Which is awesome, but I think part of what's happening is the other things might be getting overlooked.
Right.
So,
the
that's
individual
my
components.
advice.
And I agree. Ultimately, and especially, you're saying you're gearing that more towards beginners, right? At some point, all of those little pieces of the puzzle sort of fall into play, and you get your own identity as a player.
Sure.
Whether, it's the fast thing or the slow thing or the vibrato. And I'll agree 100% on the vibrato thing, too. I think that's where you're speaking on an instrument, on a guitar, right? Because when you stop whatever fast thing you're doing, right, when your fingers stop, you have to use vibrato, right? So the voice coming through your hands is in the vibrato, in my opinion. But yeah, tone is a very interesting thing. And, don't confuse it with sound, and I know they sell things, amps and gear and what have you, where, they talk about tone. It's it's got this tone in it or that tone in it, where tone is really the character of the nuances of your playing that make you unique, right? And create an identity on you, as Craig said. Nuno went to play Eddie's gear and it didn't sound like Eddie. Of course not. Of course not.
Yeah.
But yeah, give us your comments. Let us know what you think about tone versus sound, right? Again, we talk about sound, and maybe we'll do some episodes where we just, look at different guitar sounds. Not just a pedal or an amp, but a type of sound. Like what is a clean sound? What does that mean?
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
versus a distorted sound.
Sure.
And what is a distorted sound? What does it mean to be a distorted sound?
Yeah.
So we could talk about stuff like that too.
Yeah.
But
So
I think we're in agreement here. I think that there's a unanimous verdict here that
Yeah, I think that argument really needs to get put to rest because I think tone is in the fingers and it's in the individual. And I think sound is, whatever's contrived out of the amp you're plugging into or the pedal you're plugging into or the guitar you're using produces the sound. But I think the tone,
the note choice, right,
choices,
everything.
there's so many things that go into making you the player that you are. And that to me speaks more to the tone, and sound is more the things that are producing that sound other than the human being.
Right, right.
That might be the best way I can characterize
I agree.
it. So
100%.
let's hear your comments. Write them in. We'll get back to you. We always get back to our comments, right?
We try to.
We try. So
All right, guys.
there you go. We'll see you next time.
See you.
Peace.